Fear-mongering. Come on, guys. Be afraid. Be very scared. Be very afraid. Be very, very scared. Be very scared, everybody. Be very scared. The government's coming to get your fish. The government's coming to get your fish. Oh my God, everybody. The government's coming to get your fish. Oh, they're going to come in here. They're going to come into your basement. They're going to steal all your fish tanks. They're going to steal all your fish tanks, guys. I'm scared. Oh my God, I'm scared, guys.
Oh my God, I forgot to turn off this thing. There we go. What is up? It is February. February 7th. What up? What up, everybody? What are you doing? What's going on? Yeah, we're going to talk like this right now at the beginning of the show. Oh my God, we're going to talk down low. We got to get down low, bros. We got to get down low. We got to get down low into the nitty gritty. We got to get down low into the dirty, skirty stuff. We got to get down here. Oh my God, everybody, we got to get down low. We got to get down low. Oh. It's February 7th, 2022. And they're trying to turn the frogs gay. Right? Boys and girls, lady and gentlemen. Lady and gentlemen? Ladies, gentlemen, non-binaries, whatevers, other genders, whatever you are. They, them, those, whomever. What up? How you doing? Welcome back to another long format podcast style with video show. If anybody's confused on what the format is around here, it's my show. It's named after me. Dingleberry Humperdinck. Yeah, it's named after me because it is. Anyhow, my name's Joel. This is the Corvus channel. You guys are all super confused as to what it is. Most of the content on here is fish related. Sometimes we talk about the news. Sometimes we talk about the stuff's goings on. Sometimes we talk about fish tanks. Sometimes we talk about international politic relations, whether or not we're going to bomb another country as representatives of the United States, whether or not we agree with that or not, right? Whether or not we agree with the idea of leading through atrocious amounts of overspending on the military. Whether or not we think that's a good idea. We talk about all sorts of stuff around here, fellas. Ladies, non-binaries, they, them, those, whoever you are. Are you stuck in traffic right now? You might be. don't forget to honk your horn if you're stuck in traffic. It's important. Is it important? I don't know. But don't forget to hit the like button. Unless you are stuck in traffic, don't be on your phone, dudes. You might crash. You might cause a crash. Someone else might crash into you, and it might ruin their day. And then their day would be ruined, and then their insurance has to file a claim, and then people have to go through and do body work on your car and their car and the other car, and you probably got to go to the doctor and waste the doctor's time because you were texting while driving. You know what I'm saying? Not good. Everybody else is inconvenienced by your decisions, right? You know? Because we in the United States live in a society. I know. It's very confusing. It's very confusing depending on what channel you turn on when you get home from probably spending about 12 hours out of your day going to your job and doing all your obligations, and then finally getting something to eat for dinner. And then you sit down for about an hour, probably turn on any number of things. You could turn on a news program. You could turn on a Netflix. You could turn on an Amazon, which, by the way, is barely a sponsor of this channel. If you happen to buy things through the Amazon links, I'll get credit for them. But, you know, as a disclosure there, that wasn't an ad. But we all live in a society, and has it become wildly, glaringly obvious out there in the internet world that we live in a society that has fundamental disagreements on everything, more often than not, just because of the fact, right? People get lumped into specific political ideation, which means you get into an ideology, which means that you have to fall in line, essentially, with all of the talking points assigned to you, which is often framed by the right-wing party in the United States as that's what happens to the liberals, right? That's what happens to the liberals, guys. The liberals have all these talking points. The liberals they have all these talking points, and they're trying to convince you about socialism. Oh. They want to tell you about socialism. They're trying to get you. It's the boogeyman. Socialism, communism, all of these isms are the boogeyman that's completely was created with McCarthyism long time ago, and if not before that also. In these United States, it has been this has been the story of the ages. That, oh my God, all these crazy lefty people, oh my God, what do they want to do? They want people to have health care. Oh my God, they're gonna turn us into Russia. Oh my God, they're gonna turn us into communists. They're communisms. That's communisms. Screaming and yelling about how it's like, do you even understand what that word means? First of all, generally no. Am I a communist? No. I've explained this on numerous occasions. I am 100% probably what would be considered a democratic socialist or a social democrat. I don't know how you people title things anymore. Democracy to me is paramount for being able to operate a large body of human beings in a way that will benefit everybody involved. That is the best political system, in my opinion, is that everybody gets a say, and I think that our vote should be expanded. I think that everyone should be voting on all of the things that go on, and the representatives can work on implementing those things. Yes, that's my goal. My goal is a vast democracy, a strong democracy, one that works so that everybody has a say in what's going on in this gigantic community that we live in the United States. 350 million people here. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of homies. You know what I'm saying? Just imagine if all those homies were your homies. I bet your phone book would break. I don't even think your phone could handle it. I don't think your phone could handle that amount of homies. You know what I'm saying? That's too many homies. You'd be getting calls all the time. which is why we have a democratic republic here, where we're democratically elected representatives represent us when they go to the government, the three branches, right? Legislative, judiciary, executive. Did you all go to school? That's our three branches of government. Do we understand how these work? Right? Do we understand how these work? I think we do. But that's the reason why we're a representative republic as opposed to just a sheer democracy. But if we're speaking about how this relates to the fish community on YouTube here. Over the weekend, it has been brought to my attention that a bucket load of fear-mongering has come out of a couple of YouTube channels. One of them being a fella named Father Fish, who's been long since banned from my community for being extraordinarily obtuse, angry, argumentative, amongst other things, and has long since not been a part of my community. So, not speaking specifically on the person, we'll speak specifically on the video, in which is 100% fear-mongering about imaginary things that are going to happen in the future that actually come from this website right here called usarc.org. If you guys want to know what usarc.org is, we'll talk about that in a minute. But what we need to do here is we need to talk about the fact that there are, let's go screen capture smart selection, okay? What we want to talk about down here at the very bottom of their page on this Lacey Act, you can see right here, talking points. The talking points are amended to the bottom of the page. And if anybody wants to know what page it is that I'm talking about, I will link into the chat this page. Paste. There's the link to their website if you feel like going over there and seeing for yourself. I'm going to shrink these talking points down, but these are the talking points that have been appointed by this group in order for people to go onto YouTube and talk about. So today, we're going to talk about these for a minute. There's a whole list of them here, but if you happen to go look at some of the videos claiming that HR 4521, so that's a bill. You guys understand? We already talked about the bill. Nobody had any questions about how the U.S. government works, right? A bill has passed. It's a very huge, comprehensive bill, about 2,900 pages in total. I have not read the whole entire thing. I don't get paid to read the whole entire thing, but these guys sure do. These guys get paid by ZoomEd. These guys get paid by ZoomEd and whatnot in order to do that. If you want to look at those documents, you can, because they're a 501(c)(3). They have to post those things up on the up for the public to look them up. And every year they receive about $100,000 from ZoomEd on average. Some of the years are a little bit less for whatever reason. I don't know. They receive about $100,000 every year from ZoomEd. Some of the years are not disclosed. Some of the tax filings are they put an NA there instead of who made the contributions. But here are their talking points that they have posted on their website. 1, these amendments will be devastating to thousands of businesses of all sizes, which is absolutely contrary to the purpose of the Competes Act. Guys, these amendments will be devastating to thousands of businesses of all sizes. Thousands of businesses, guys. Thousands of businesses of all sizes will be devastated. They'll be devastated, guys. The fear-mongering. We gotta remember to stay strong with the fear-mongering here, fellas. Okay? These thousands of companies are going to be devastated. Number 2, millions of pet owners will be harmed by the misuse of the Lacey Act. Oh, guys, fearmonger. We got to fearmonger as much as we possibly can. Guys, we got to tell everyone you're going to be harmed by the misuse of the Lacey Act that was put into effect in the year, 1900? It's been around for 122 years, but they're going to come get you now. Okay? Number 3, as seen previously when listing species as injurious under the Lacey Act, a heavy-handed brush is used to paint species as injurious that may only be an issue for 1 or 2 states and hardly any large percentage of the U.S. Oh, guys. Hey, guys, they're not going to... they're not going to let fish in because it would be bad to have them in one or two states, which, of course, they'll continue to use the example of Hawaii, which, by the way, you're not supposed to bring things into Hawaii. It's actually state law. But if you actually go to Hawaii, you will find cherry shrimp. You'll find cherry shrimp in their creeks. Do you think that's good? Do you think that's good? Is that good? Do you think it's good to have cherry shrimp in the creeks in Hawaii? Are they supposed to be there? No. Are they there? Yep. Number 4, if one state has a threat, that state can address it. All other states should not suffer the unjust implications and restrictions. Oh, guys, the restrictions. Oh, my God. You know what? Each state should just, I don't know, they should just regulate themselves. Okay, well, let's think about Wyoming for a second here, guys. There's only about 683,000 people or something like that living in Wyoming. Somebody look it up and post it in the chat. I'm not doing it right now. I'm busy reviewing this. But do you think Wyoming has the resources to monitor every border in Wyoming at all times to make sure that people aren't bringing fish or whatever over the border? Do you think that Wyoming should have to do that? Do you think Wyoming should constantly have to have people posted at all points of egress within and out of the state in order to make sure that people aren't bringing in invasive wildlife into Wyoming at all times? Does anybody kind of forgot that Yellowstone is in Wyoming, so they're probably going to get about between 2 and 5 million people coming in and leaving the state every year to just come visit? Do you think Wyoming should have to just pull all those people over and make sure that they have fish or don't have fish in their car or identify the fish that are in their car? Do you think that Wyoming should be responsible for that? Do you think? Or do you think that the federal government, which already oversees importing into the country, right, at the ports of entry, which they already are in charge of monitoring, correct? Do you think maybe the federal government should be overseeing that because they already oversee it? So we could bolster the ability to bring in things that should be imported into the country, right? Oh, no. Just every state, just whatever. Every state for itself. Every state for himself, guys. Guys, every state for himself. Every state can just handle whatever it is. They'll just do it on their own because, yeah. Number 5, the lack of forethought involved makes these amendments rife with unintended consequences and government overreach. Okay, let's fear-monger about government overreach, guys. The government's going to come into your house and they're going to net all the fish out of your fish tank. They're going to come in. They're going to come and get you with unintended consequences. The lack of forethought involved makes these amendments rife. The lack of forethought. Nobody thought about them. Nobody put any thought into this, guys. Guys, nobody put any thought into this, and they're going to come and get you with unintended consequences. Number 6, peer-reviewed science has been previously ignored in favor of garbage pseudoscience in order to artificially validate biased, injurious species listings. Is there any kind of citation on this? No, absolutely nothing. No citation on any peer-reviewed stuff that was thrown out. Nope, just making a statement. Number 7, if these amendments pass, the Lacey Act will leave pet owners everywhere unable to move across state lines with their family pets. Untrue. It actually says in the law, or in the bill, which I should probably post the bill up here so that we can kind of go back and forth about it. Where's my button for it? It's around here somewhere. We'll go over. We'll go over the bill here in a minute. But as you can see, there's 22 of them here. Number 22, the aquaculture industry alone anticipates losses of nearly $500 million. Okay, what aquaculture industry is going to lose $500 million? Is it aquaculture within the United States that is actually happening? Is it aquaculture that's illegally happening outside of the United States? 21, please realize the Lacey Act amendments found within the American Competes Act are illogical and unjust, which is actually just, I don't like them, they're bad. They're illogical and unjust. Is it just? Are we going to try to paraphrase? Are we going to try to define just and whether or not something is unjust? 20, these Lacey amendments are far-reaching and frankly un-American. Okay, is something American or un-American? Can we define that? Can we define something that is American or un-American, right? The Secret History Living in Your Aquarium is one of the other channels that posted a video about this, about how this act is bad, about how what's going on here is bad. I'm glad that he's in the chat, but he says that what did he say? I think you're being just as sensational as people saying everything is going to be banned. Okay. That's my job. My job is to be sensational, correct? I have a show that people like to watch, right? And listen to, which is supposed to be a sensational show, right? And I'm being sensational in response to the people that have over-sensationalized these talking points from usarc.org, because they're literally parroting to you the talking points put onto this website. Because people even linked this website in their videos. They post this website, which is a sheer acknowledgement that this is where they were reading about this bill, right? So is that somehow incorrect? Is that incorrect assessment? People got this posted in the bottom of their YouTube videos as to their citation as to where they're getting their information from. Am I allowed to critique it? Am I allowed to make fun of it? Am I allowed to make fun of the fact that this is all a bunch of garbage that you would see on basically Tucker Carlson tonight, right? Am I allowed to do that? Because there's not a single point made in these talking order or in this list of talking points that is justified with any kind of realistic application of as to what happened. Oh, number 11, the court ruling upheld that banning interstate transportation is overreaching and that the only localities or states or legitimate range matches should be considered or should consider regulations regarding these species. This is basically true. There's some truth to this. Do they disclose the fact that USA Arc was awarded a $150,000 settlement in regards to that? Nope, they don't. No disclosure of that. You actually have to go through their tax documents to find that. But the reason that they won this case is that there is currently no law that says you can't transport between state to state on a federal level, right? So their statement is that it should be required that the states are the ones that should be applying law against people for breaking, for essentially breaking state law within the states. Okay. Now, if you have a giant black flag with a thin blue line across it in your yard or hanging out front of your house or in your office or whatever, because you want to support the police, right? Which I do. I 100% want to support the police. I want to increase their training. I want to increase their health care. I want to increase their ability to properly police. That's what I want. I want them to have more resources to be able to police better. 100%. Do you think it's the police's job in local jurisdictions to drive around and try and inspect people's fish and find out what's going on? Or should we be regulating this stuff on an import level? Because the actual law itself, and I'll read it to you. I'll actually post it up here. As proposed, states this right here. In general, Section 42 of Title 18 United States Code is amended in subsection A1. A. In the first sentence by striking shipment between the continental United States and inserting transport between the United States or between the states, which is the difference in change, right? In the first sentence, strike Hawaii and C by inserting after the first sentence the following: notwithstanding any other provision of law, the Secretary of Interior may prescribe by regulation an emergency designation prohibiting the importation of any species of wild animals, wild birds, fish, including mollusks and crustacea, amphibians or reptiles, or the offspring or eggs of any such species, as injurious to human beings, to the interests of agriculture, horticulture, forestry, or to the wildlife, or the wildlife resources of the United States, for not more than 3 years under this subsection, if the Secretary of the Interior determines that such regulation is necessary to address the imminent threat to human beings, to interests, blah, 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 blah. But subsection 1, right, states that Hold on. Where did it go? I'm actually trying to read instead. I didn't highlight this. Here it is. In general, importation into the United States of any species of wild animal, wild birds, fish, including mollusks, crustacea, amphibians, or reptiles, or the offspring or eggs of any such species that is not native to the United States, and as of the date of enactment of the America Competes Act 2022, it is not prohibited under subsection A1, is prohibited unless during the 1 year period preceding the date of the enactment of the America Competes Act of 2022, the species was, in more than minimal qualities, imported to the United States or transported between the states, any territory of the United States, the District of Columbia, the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, or in any possession of the United States, or the Secretary of the Interior determines after an opportunity for public comment that the species does not pose a significant risk of invasiveness to the United States and publishes a notice in the Federal Register of the determination. Okay? So not only is there a public comment period, there's also any fish that has come in the last year in any kind of significant quantity, right? If you're talking about tetras, if you're talking about angelfish, if you're talking about plecos, if you're talking about whatever you're talking about, if those have already been imported or transported within the United States, it doesn't change. Okay. I have to find what is the minimum quantities because Alex needs to know because he probably hasn't read this, which is always a shocker to me. What does minimum quantities mean? It actually assigns a 1 year period. I have to find it. It assigns a 1 year period where it can be reviewed as to what the minimum quality is. Regulations: no later than 1 year after the date of enactment of this act, the Secretary of the Interior shall promulgate regulations to define the term minimum quantities for purposes of subsection D1A of Section 42 of Title 18, United States Code, as added by subsection A, Mark II. Effective date of Section 42 of 18. Okay, so anyhow, let me paraphrase this for you. Within the year period, the Secretary of the Interior, while having under public comment, will determine the minimum qualities. Okay? It says it right here on page 1665, right there. If you want to go look it up. This section of the bill isn't very long, which is ultimately my point. Like, it's 6-7 pages long or something like that. And there's also something that is very important here, as been pointed out by a lot of people. We don't have money to describe the fish, okay? Is what most everybody has pointed out to me. Most everybody has pointed out we can't afford to describe fish. It takes scientists. It takes documents. It takes peer review. It takes time. It takes research. It takes money. Okay? It takes money to do all these things, correct? Part A, under the Endangered Species Act of 1973, under Appendix 1 of the Convention of International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora, done at Washington, March 3, 1973, funding. There is authorized to be appropriated to carry out this section $150 million for each of fiscal years 2022 through 2031. So we're talking about $150 million a year that is going to be appropriated in order to fund research into specific fish, fauna, plants, things like that, that would be approved, and also to find out if they're within minimum quantities, right? As described by so many people, there's no money. There's no money to describe any of these fish. There's no money to do any of this work. If we rely on companies, which we have in the United States, we've essentially relied on companies to describe these fish. They don't do it. They don't do it. As described by most people, it costs money and time and resources, and there's not a whole lot of motivation for them to do it, right? There's not a whole lot of motivation for them to do it. Where do you think they're supposed to get the money from? Currently, companies like ZoomEd are funding U.S. ARC, which is just a group of people that are arguing against any kind of regulation within the business, right? Within the business of owning a fish store, being a fish importer, doing any of that stuff. And there you go, making an ascription again. Says, I think people freaking out are also being ridiculous. 150 million is not much, sadly. And then here you go. It will go to the agriculture and aquaculture big biz lobbyists in Florida. Where's your proof for that? Do we have proof for that? Because currently companies are giving money to these groups like US ARC, right? Which, by the way, you can look up their tax documentation. It's there if you feel like looking it up. Here's one of my issues here is that this is all driven behind we can't do any regulation because regulation is bad, right? Regulation is bad. We can't regulate anything because regulation is bad. Regulation can be bad. Certain things being regulated can be bad, but the total lack of regulation is what has put us to this point where we're at right now. I would implore to anybody who's very interested in the fish hobby, who's very interested in plants and agriculture and stuff like that, to get out there, go to a third world country, go to another country and find out how things are done. For instance, just this last year, we went to Peru, and you could see all sorts of illegal fishing and all sorts of illegal stuff going on, logging, cutting things down. I even listened to that Father Fish video where he said the Lacey Act has never been enforced. A simple Google search, I found 20 different cases where the Lacey Act has been actively utilized and is utilized as case law. What's up, babe?
I'm just shaking some eggs at you.
You're shaking eggs at me? I don't. Well, at least bring them down here.
Egg season has begun.
Oh my God, we have tiny eggs. Egg season has begun. Look at them eggs. You got little tiny dinky eggs. What's your?
I'm not sure if these are our new hens or not.
I don't know if it's the old ones or the new ones. Who knows? Yep. So, first off, sorry for the egg thing there. The Lacey Act has been forced on many occasions to the benefit of the United States, to the benefit of the people in the United States, and guess who gets sidelined and who's the benefit of the Lacey Act? All of the countries that we do international trade with. One of the few reasons that you could literally point to capitalism being a beneficial system for pretty much everybody in the world is that our international, hold on. Oh, sorry. I forgot the word agreements there. Sorry. Our international trade agreements, a lot of the stipulations that are put into those trade agreements are what's going to happen on the other end. You understand? That we've got a huge market here. We've got lots of people that want to buy fish, wood, plants, whatever it is that you're doing over there. And what we want to do is help the people within that country to sort of apply some of the American ideals that we have, to have like a safe work environment, to earn a minimum wage, to work a reasonable amount of hours. We apply that within our trade legislation, right? So if we go to Peru, we want to buy X amount of fish, we want to buy X amount of wood, we want to buy X amount of textiles. Instead of just sending companies out there, one of the things that we do is we utilize the strength of our government to go down and negotiate how this operation is going to go down so that there is oversight, so that people aren't just cutting down trees and sending them on boats, and then they show up here and we go, what is all this wood, for instance? One of the biggest, most recent Lacey Act utilizations was against Gibson guitars. Gibson Company was buying illegally forested wood. They were buying it knowingly, right? The Lacey Act was how we enforced them to stop doing that, basically. We had to fine them People got in trouble. I think somebody went to jail. The Secret History Living in Your Aquarium says, Joel, how much does it cost to describe a species and its impact? I don't know. How much does it cost? Why don't you tell me? Do you have citations handy of the cost related to each species? No, I don't have citations handy specifically right now. I don't. Shit, you got me. Well, I guess everything I said was completely wrong, so I guess we got to, I don't know, I guess we better call and make sure we don't legislate anything. I guess maybe we'll just turn everywhere into Walmart. You know, everybody should just make minimum wage forever. We'll just bring in foreign goods regardless of where they come from. We don't care where anything comes from, right? As long as it's super cheap, we'll just do that. Because, by the way, that's what happens with fish right now. I've gone on and on about all the time I spent trying to advocate for autosinkless, right? I've gone on and on and on about it on this show. How I wanted to advocate for autosinkless, how autosinkless are fished in a terrible manner. How they're scooped out, they're stuffed in a box, they're shipped off to the United States, and when they get here, by the way, they get sorted through and thrown into a dumpster. Very rarely is there any kind of oversight into how fish are being imported into the United States on the back end of big companies just buying lots of fish. I have access to wholesalers' pricing on things unrelated to my job, has nothing to do with my job. I still have the lists from over 10 years ago when I still have access to some of the live websites because they don't ever update any of their software. I can go look at the costs of certain things and let you know what they are. I'm not going to show you any proprietary information because that would be against the rules, guys. But I can tell you there's certain fish that come into the United States, like autosinkless, that companies are buying for like 1 cent a fish, essentially, right? There's like 5,000 in a box, and they're paying very minimal amount of money to bring them in. Then they mark them up, put them in the store, sell them to you. You have no provenance to know what anything is going on behind the scenes. You don't have a clue. How would anybody have a clue when you're just a person who shops at a store, right? It doesn't matter what store you're going to. You don't ask them to see their paperwork or see what's going on with the fish. You just go in and look and see what's there and whether or not you're willing to spend money on it, right? You go, oh, $3.99 a fish. Okay, let me buy those fish. You have no idea where it came from, right? Just by the same extent that you have no idea where Nike sneakers come from. You have no idea where, clothes that you buy, TVs that you buy. You don't know any of that stuff until somebody investigates it and you find out about it, and you might make a decision to no longer shop with that company. Sure. But it's not enough. It's not enough for the American consumer to just change whatever it is that they're doing. So salmon alone can cost millions if we go broad on examination. Okay. The salmon fishery is currently being threatened by certain fish that we have to overfish for now. Actually, we're talking about this in our community. It was actually brought up by one of our members. Let me go look it up here. I just want to make sure I don't want to talk out of turn. Aubrey was talking about this. So, in the Columbia River, man stepped in, and I think there's 19 dams on the Columbia River, something like that. I don't know. I forget how many there are right off the top of my head. I think there's 19 dams. But one of the problems that they found out over time, eventually, because of research done, right, that, hey, there's fish that are threatening them. The pike minnow are threatening the salmon fishery, because people eat salmon, right? So now it's everybody's problem, correct? Everybody's problem means something's got to happen, correct? And you have to start somewhere. And many, many, many years ago in the Pacific Northwest, we started researching salmon. So you probably could come up with a number that says millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars of research has gone into salmon. You could probably find out that there's millions of dollars of research into the salmon runs just from Mount St. Helens blowing up, right? If people remember, Mount St. Helens blew up in 1980. I'm not a huge math wizard around here, but I think it's 41 years currently, coming up on the 42nd year anniversary. So even if you spent $50,000 a year, you'd still have that million number. And then you could go, oh, there's millions spent on the salmon research out here, right? Salmon has been a big part of the Pacific Northwest pretty much forever. So any piece of research you could lump in there and say, well, look, it's crazy. But one of the projects that they've put into place is to catch pike minnow and pay a bounty on them, which is people get freaked out if I tell you guys about this. But when I was a kid, we had property in Eastern Washington, and there was a bounty on starlings, the birds, because they would go out and they would screw up apples. And so the applied let's stop starlings from eating apples was give kids guns, then we'd go out and we'd shoot starlings and we'd get paid for it. Because you'd come back with the dead birds, and you'd get paid for the dead birds, right? So one of the reasons that there's motivation to put legislation in the way here is instead of going, oh, we got to kill all this stuff, you go, we need to inspect where this stuff is coming from. We need to find out where things are going, where they're coming from. And as explained by all these Trumpers out there who have frankly lost their minds, is that any regulation is bad. It's all bad. It's just going to ruin everything. Everything's going to be ruined, right? But the reasoning where we're at right now is that people don't want to just have to kill a bunch of fish or kill a bunch of birds in order to mitigate what's going on. If you talk to the Trumpers, they would say, oh, well, the business will figure it out. But the business has never figured it out. They haven't stopped a single illegal fishery to the extent of my knowledge, right? They might have passively benefited some fishery in some way or whatnot. Yeah, like Zipgun says, there's a bounty on Burmese pythons in Florida, not doing a dent on their population at all, right? So instead of utilizing proper regulation on the Burmese pythons, they're just on the loose now. And so now we have to pay tax money to go kill snakes, right? We just have to go out and kill snakes and get paid by tax money. We just have to get paid by tax money to kill snakes now, right? That's our plan. That's the plan. That's the Florida plan. Same as the Texas plan. I don't know, the pigs got out. Now that we got wild boars everywhere, so we're just going to go shoot wild boars Ted Nugent style with a machine gun and a helicopter, right? That's what we're going to do. That's how we're going to do it, man. That's how we're going to figure this out. So Alex says, right, so out of 32,000 species of fish, 150 million may not cover them all. Yes, it's 150 million every year for 10 years is what is being legislated currently, right? Now, the last time I was at one of these big meetings that had these USA ARC guys at it, that had PJAC at it, that had some other groups, the Northwest whatever, and these guys and those guys and whatever, I had the pleasure to be there with Heiko Blair, right? Now, the big reason that they were there is that they wanted to enforce or stop legislation against the wild fishery for yellow tangs. Now, I understand a lot of people in here are freshwater fish keepers, right? So you don't really care about saltwater fish. Well, yellow tangs are one of the biggest market fish in saltwater, period. End of story. While we were there with Heiko willingly stood up and essentially did his best as a one-man protest. And unfortunately at the time, I didn't stand up and shout with him. But what he was shouting is this sentiment, that if we as fish keepers want these fish to be in the hobby, these fish need to be aquacultured. Then we need to have aquacultured fish in the countries where we're at that are supplying these hobbies. Wild fisheries only damage the ecosystem, right? Now, you might damage the ecosystem a little bit. You might damage the ecosystem beyond repair. If you want to figure out what those numbers are, you'd have to, I don't know, spend a lot of money on research, correct? To find out what it is that you're doing. If you want to find out, right? If you want to find out, let's talk about the American buffalo. Let's talk about the American wolf, the American gray wolf, where it's been like, where it's gone, right? In the Pacific Northwest, I can give you a specific I can give you a specific example that doesn't have to do with food, right? One of the big issues with salmon is that it's food. It goes towards everybody, right? But I can tell you, back in the 90s, the spotted owl. If you guys are familiar with the spotted owl, it's an owl that lives in the woods, bros. It's a small owl that lives in the woods. Spotted owl was all the rage around here because logging, where I live, was wildly out of control for many decades. To the point where finding old growth here is like super hard. It's super difficult to go find. And I live in the Evergreen State, named after the freaking trees, right? And I've used this anecdote on many occasions that to tie into the earlier thing I was talking about with Mount St. Helens. Well, Ronald Reagan was president when that happened, and he flew out here on Air Force One, probably an old Air Force One. It's probably not the one now. Guys, it's probably a different plane. It had the same name, though. He flew out here, and they were flying over the state, and Ronald Reagan exclaimed, just the level of devastation was just blowing his mind, right? We're blowing his mind. His mind was being blown, okay, about the devastation that was going on. And they had to tell him, they said, sir, Mr. President, sir, because that's how people talk, right? They said, sir, Mr. President, sir, that's not the volcanic explosion. That's just the regular logging. That's how much logging destruction there was. That he was looking out the window from Air Force One and was just gobsmacked by the devastation that he was seeing out the window. That then had to be explained to him that that's just logging. They're just cutting all that down, right? The spotted owl and its habitat was threatened. Spotted owl is a threatened animal. There wasn't a lot of them. They go, hey, this is endangered. This is a problem. We can't cut these trees down. These owls, if we get rid of them, we won't have them anymore. They won't exist anymore. Guys, we can't do that. Okay. So they came in. People rioting in the streets. Everybody freaking out that they're not going to be able to cut trees down anymore, blah, blah, blah. Well, they figured out a protected area. And then guess what happened? All of the loggers went out of business. All the loggers, they're all gone now. They don't exist anymore. Or they still existed, and slowly but surely did the amount of jobs disappear because of this character right here. This character right here is called a feller buncher, okay? Now, if you've ever seen this wonderful piece of machinery, it is probably one of the most amazing things you will ever see in your entire life. It sits up on a wonderful platform, more often than not, a giant piece of machinery, which is just an astounding level of beauty, majesty. Oh, what a lovely machine. I got to admit, I love tractors, bros. I'm a child like that. I'm a young boy. Whenever I see a bright yellow tractor, excavator, machinery, giant truck, whatever, dude. This piece of machinery right here eliminated the use of a whole bunch of people because this piece of machinery can knock down an acre of heavily wooded area in like, I forget the number now. I don't put it off the top of my head, but it's like 15 minutes. It takes no time. It bucks them down, and if you don't know what bucking is, it means it knocks all the branches off, so you end up with a log, and then it bucks them down by cutting them into the length that go onto the back of the trucks, and it picks them up and loads them onto the truck also. So it gives you an idea when this all used to be done by dudes with chainsaws out there on their feet, walking around with a chainsaw, with a big old. They always had that big old baseball chewing tobacco in their cheek, right? Whenever you ran into a logger, they always had like their cheeks were all red, from being all swolled up from too much tobacco in there, right? They were chawing on that big leaf, you know what I'm talking about? Anyhow, a lot of those hombres got put out of business. A lot of those hombres don't have no jobs no more. Because when you used to go out onto a logging site, there'd be like, 50, 60 dudes out there working. Now you go out there, there's like 6. There's like 6, maybe 8. A couple of operator guys, some trucks driving up and down. There's just not a whole lot going on. Used to be like a small little tiny town, microscopic tiny town, right? And then the reason I kind of bring this up, and I've brought this up in the past, one of the streets downtown Seattle, is Skid Row. Skid Row nowadays is synonymous with where all the bad stuff goes on in town, right? Well, that originated in Seattle, Washington. It's called Yesler Way now, because there was a super rich oligarch guy who named the road after himself and built the tower down there and stuff. And so what a lot of people will point to is they'll go, oh, my God, the spotted owl and this stupid bird that we had to worry about, right? We had to worry about this. We had to worry about this bird, guys. We had to worry about this bird, and all the loggers went out of business. Well, the loggers didn't go out of business. The loggers got automated. They got big machinery to do the jobs that humans used to have to get paid for, right? And they do the job much faster and much more efficiently. It's a matter of efficiency. And these things happen, right? So my reasoning of talking about this stuff is that they go, oh, regulation's going to ruin everything. We're going to have these regulations come in. Now everyone's going to steal all your fish out of your aquariums. You're not going to be able to go anywhere, except for it even says in the law that if this fish is already established in the United States in what is considered, I forget the exact verbiage, but basically if there's a lot of them in the United States, they're going to leave that. But any new introductions of stuff that's coming in, they're going to be able to look into it, find out what that fish is, see if it's going to cause harm. One of the things that I often like to bring up, but I didn't have any articles to kind of point you all towards, is the snakehead. And I've definitely talked about this before. A lot of people collect the snakeheads. Snakeheads made it to the U.S. I forget. I don't even know if they're not native, are they? Yeah, China and Russia. So somebody please explain to me how a Chinese and Russian fish, freshwater fish, by the way, made it to the United States, right? How do you think it got here? Do you think it got here by the super responsible fish keepers that we are? Right? Come on, guys. We're super responsible, aren't we? We're super responsible and infallible. We've never made a mistake. We've never done anything. We've never done anything of the like. We've never made a mistake, ever. Why is the snakehead in all sorts of waterways now? Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, Susquehanna. The Susquehanna in Pennsylvania. Oh, my God. Come on, guys. Georgia. All over. How many waterways are being brutally decimated by the snakehead right now? Right? Yeah. How many waterways are ruined by that right now? It's because of fish keepers. I mean, they didn't bring them here live to eat them. They didn't bring them here live to eat them live or something. They brought them here to put them in their fish tank. People want them in their fish tank. They think they're cool. Alyssa Bentley said, "Is Thousand Island dressing from New York?" Yes. Herp Diversity says, while technically no, it won't be illegal, it will seriously hurt the industry and significantly limit the availability and hurt a lot. I am typically pro-regulation. I am not pro this legislation. Right. So, as I've mentioned before, I would like to see somebody like actually ascribe why this would be, why would this legislation cause a problem? Everyone likes to make the descriptive statement of it'll be a problem because it's bad. Why is it bad? Because it's bad. In what manner? Oh, to make it more difficult. Make what more difficult? Importing fish. Okay, importing unknown fish? Okay. Oh, no, we are not that responsible, but to use this legislation would cause more harm than good. Okay, in what way? The blacklist idea is great, so stop any significant potential for harmful fish. Okay. As been described to me, oh, well, if we have a blacklist, that means that all the fish are banned except for the whitelist, right? All the fish are banned except for the whitelist, right? So anything that's described, anything that's a known fish, can be brought in, right? Yeah. Kelly Foreman says, I've heard a lot of fish tube streamers and commenters over the past couple of days saying if the government comes for their fish, they can look down the barrel of their gun. Yes, which is why I pointed out earlier in the stream, a lot of this rhetoric is straight up politicized nonsense from what is ultimately the mega group. That's where this is coming from, right? And the reality is that I think people are casting a lot of like this is what will happen and this is bad, without doing the this is what will happen. They just say there'll be a list, there'll be a white list and a black list. Okay. Now, I think somebody's pretty much leaving out a large group of people that already exist under this wild oppression, right? And that would be the European Union. I will tell you, from having traveled around and visited fish rooms and visited wholesalers and visited lots of places in Europe, I've been out there. Europe operates under this same guideline, right? In the United States, you can't even prosecute a fish keeping store for intentionally selling unhealthy fish, right? You can't. There's nothing you can do. As a person, as a U.S. citizen, there's nothing that you could do to be brought to a store who's intentionally selling sick fish. They're not taking care of their tanks. They're not doing all that stuff, right? And strangely enough, in the EU, the aquarium hobby is alive and well. I've yet to encounter a single person in Europe that said, my God, there's just no way that we'll ever have the aquarium hobby ever again because we've been legislated. We have to have our fish identified and whatnot. And as a matter of fact, I forget the name of the guy, but he's one of the main guys from Amazona and whatnot. Actually met him out at I have the interview with him recorded. I never released it because parts of it went out with Corey. But we talked about the problem with identifying fish. And one of the big issues is there's no money and there's no motivation. There's no motivation for anybody to chip in to start identifying fish. Because why? In the United States, it doesn't matter. You just import random old fish. It don't matter. Nobody cares. McDonald's giveaways. What? What's a McDonald's giveaway? What? I'm going to put what in the chat. because I'm allowed to. But one of the things that we spent about an hour and a half talking about that is that a lot of the fish that come into the big wholesalers in Europe, they have to be identified. You got to know what it is. Herp Diversity says the EU laws are very different than this proposed one. Some regulations on that would be fine. Okay. I read off the proposed legislation earlier, right? What part of this is bad? I guess I got to use that terminology because maybe it's just not breaking through to people. What part of this law, this proposed legislation, right, in order to not only fund what's going on, but to maintain the existing imports already? Or maybe it's the shark fin soup part. Maybe you guys want the shark fin. Maybe you guys want the prohibition sale on shark fins. I didn't throw this part in because maybe I was just under the callous assumption. Maybe I was just assuming that you guys would actually be opposed to shark fin sales in the United States. Not sure. I don't know. But maybe it's that part. Because people are just saying it's bad, so I don't like it. And it's like, well, what does that mean? And it says, and then the one thing that I saw was you won't be able to take your fish across state lines, which this law specifically says if you already have fish that are in the United States, you can take them across state lines, right? It says that. In this proposed legislation, it says you can take them across state lines. So there's nobody that's saying that you can't take your fish across state lines, right? So that's not a problem because it's not here, right? Some people say the legislation is bad because it's bad. Well, I disagree. I would say that bad legislation is bad. Like, I guess if there was something that I opposed, I would go like, look, this is problematic. We should probably figure out how to change that, right? I don't understand what is going on. Or human trafficking in fishing boats. That's also, what are you talking about? The vagueness of the law, it could he a law that does nothing or could ban everything. Where does it say that? Where does it say it could ban everything or nothing or everything or whatever? It literally describes like what's going on here. It gives a 1-year period, right? It gives a 1-year period with public comment, right? Preceding the date of the enactment of the American Competes Act of 2022, the species was in more than minimum quantities imported into the United States or transported between the states, any territory of the United States, in the District of Columbia, the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, or any possession of the United States. What? Where? Where is that? I guess the question is about what's a minimum quantity, right? So the minimum quantity is going to be established within 1 year with a public comment period, right? With a public comment period as to what the minimum quantity should be considered, right? Is it 100 fish? Is it 1,000 fish? Is it 1? Is it 50? What's the number? And by the way, this hasn't even passed yet. This hasn't even passed yet, and people have made statements that tropical fish will be illegal on January 1st, 2023. What is that? What are you talking about? How would tropical fish be illegal? Seeker history living in your aquarium. Talk to a lawyer. That's what I did. He said it's ridiculously unclear in what it would mean. Okay, did you pay a lawyer or did you just talk to somebody who's a lawyer? Right? Because a lawyer can't give you legal advice as to what's going on unless you have paid them. Right? So you just talk to a guy who's a lawyer? I mean, I talked to a guy who's a plumber last week. I talked to a guy who's a nuclear engineer last week. what does that mean? You know, like I don't know. Whatever, man. I just. I mean, I feel like if you want to, I guess if you want to have, I guess if maybe you want to have me on your stream or something, yeah. I mean, maybe if you want to have me on your stream or something, we can talk about it. But the continued like, it's just bad in the chat just doesn't work, and it doesn't work with me that if you just say I talk to a lawyer, it doesn't do anything. Herp Diversity says that means no due process, public input, hearings, advance notice, etc. for injurious listings. It literally says there's public input in it. All right. Yeah. Well, either way. Yeah, either way. Okay, let's look through the chat here. Permit FWS to not allow importation if a species has not been imported in minimum quantities to be defined in the year prior to enactment of this act. Yeah. Yeah, and there's a whole portion that explains if it has been imported in minimum quantities, there's no reason why that's an issue. And it also gives a year with public comment written into the legislation, right? As to what the minimum quantity will be. But they would have power to ban anything without comment. Okay. They have that power right now. I hope you guys understand that. I mean, first off, they have that power now. They have that power to literally ban anything from any country for any reason without comment. Okay? Whether it's the Trump administration, whether it's the Biden administration, whether it's the Bush administration, whatever, they already have that, first of all. The Lacey Act amendments are farther down on the document. Yeah, it's 2,900 pages. It was brought up to me it was brought up to me on Friday, and I honestly didn't read all 2,900 pages because I wasn't paid by ZoomEd. I wasn't paid by ZoomEd to read it all. The Waterbox says they already have the power to ban anything without comment. That's true. That's what I said. Yep. Of course they do. Why wouldn't they? One of the biggest things they do on imports when they don't want them to come in is that they say that there's dirt in them because you can't bring dirt from out of the country. Elephanto King Superb says, when you guys were collecting in South America, did you guys go to any clear springs? Yes, we went to one clear spring, which had actually been turned into the town bathtub. It was the one clear spring that we went to, and in the time that the guides had been there since the last time, it actually turned into the bathtub where everybody washed because people didn't take baths or showers before that, which they don't take showers still, but everybody takes a bath now. It's actually improved public health extraordinarily, but you guys could probably get the idea of why it would be an issue to shoot a YouTube video in a community's bathtub. Also, I felt completely, I was like, hey man, I'm happy to film just about anything, but I'm not going to film people like taking a bath. That's just, it feels like so wildly degrading. I was just like, nah, I'm not going to film any of this. Northwest Aqua Hobby says, I just wanted to jump in and say thank you for looking at this topic from a non-biased perspective. Not saying I agree or disagree with the bill. The thing is, we've had free reign in the United States where companies like Petco, PetSmart, along with all the subsidiary companies that wholesale bring in stuff, they're bringing in fish now where they have no idea where they're coming from. And it's one of the things that I wanted to cover while we were down in Peru, but have been extraordinarily hesitant to make a video about that because I don't want to cast a shadow on anybody that was down there. Everything that we did while we were there was legal and above board. We're allowed to catch fish in the methodology that we were doing it. Nothing was bad. And by the way, the only people I filmed that were filming illegal that were fishing illegally or whatever were locals, right? There's a guy who was dynamite fishing while we were there. There's no one to enforce it, right? There's no one to enforce like where the fish are caught, how they're caught in countries throughout the world, right? There's barely anyone to even regulate here in the United States. Imagine how many times you've gone out fishing. One time I went out on a fishing trip. I didn't see enforcement in 5 days that we were out there. And which was super funny because we got to camp, we cut up all of our fish, gutted everything and had it in a cooler. Everything that we caught like the last 2 days, we'd cut everything down, gutted all of our fish, cleaned it, all that. So all we had left was just sides of fish, basically. And when enforcement showed up, they said, "Oh, somebody called us and said you guys caught a lot of fish." And we said, "Okay, here's our license." We were catching rainbow trout, I think, if memory suits. So here's our licenses. This is the fish we have. And he goes, "Oh," and he opens up the cooler and he goes, "Oh, you guys have already cleaned him and cut him, huh?" And he goes, "Well, I can't measure him now." So it's just like, we don't even have that much enforcement here in the U.S. And then just suddenly have an expectation for like Thailand to be like, "Hey, go out there and enforce in the woods," right? So one of the things that I wanted to talk about with Peru was the illegal logging business that goes on from Peru and comes to the United States, and how they're trying to enforce that. And the unfortunate part is that I think in all of the Amazon jungle in Peru, I think the enforcement officers that they have is like 7 or something crazy like that. And it's a big it's a big issue that is impossible to be tackled because they don't have any real reason to do it other than they're trying to maintain their forests, but there's not a whole lot of political motivation to do it. And especially not a lot of political motivation to do it if the market where you're selling the wood to, when those people don't care and they just give you the money for whatever it is that you happen to be selling, regardless of whether it was legally cut down or not, there's no motivation within the country to go like, "Oh, we need to hire a bunch of people. We need to train a bunch of people. We need to give them equipment and jobs and employment to go out and make sure that we're maintaining our forest," right? Jeremy, every time I went fishing, DNR found me. They must have tagged my tackle box. Probably true. There's probably a tracker somewhere in your tackle box. Probably because how effective of a angler you are. Dean Tweedale has the opinion that Central Pet backed this revision to the Lacey Act. Kaiser Group helped draft it, and they are a Republican lobbyist group, which seems fishy. What if? I don't know what Dean has to think about. He hasn't put any kind of public statements out, so I wouldn't know. And I haven't talked to him about it either. So hard for me to make a statement on that. One of the issues with the documentation to find out like who was backing the people that are against it, essentially, right? Is that some of the years you don't have to publish exactly who funded your situation. But let me look through a couple of these real quick, because I remember I thought, although it's not out of the realm of possibility that a company would or could double dip, right, and back both sides, which would be funny, right? I'm not funded by anybody. I'm funded by you guys, people that watch this channel, people that, feel like they want to contribute to whatever my wacky projects are. We got to update that number. We lost a member. We don't know what happened. We lost a member. I don't know. They probably, They probably are donating to a re-election campaign or something now. Who knows? Who knows what they're doing? I don't know. But they disappeared. We're down to 71, which is a bummer. As I've stated in the past, we'll probably get down to one member at some point, and then I'm just going to give him the show. That's my plan. That's really my plan. So in 2019, the usark.org was had big donations from National Reptile Breeders, All Pro Shipping, NARBC, which I'm not sure what that is, ZooMed Laboratories, $100,000, Rodent Pro, $45,000, Ballroom Pythons, Lasco Incorporated, Timberline Fisheries. Those are their big ticket backers, the people that are blanketly opposing this legislation. And as I've stated earlier, I'm a proponent of this legislation for the reasons that I've stated earlier. I will shorten them now, but number one, funding in order to start enforcing where these fish are coming from, how they're being fished, how they're getting here, and funding the identification of them. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the show, it has been one of those gigantic problems, and as I guess people on the other side of whatever political spectrum or whatever you want to put, whatever group you want to put yourself into, we've been relying on private companies to do the descriptions, and they have not done it. It's always explained that it costs too much money, it takes too much time, it takes too much this, it takes too much that. And I'll reference back to Heiko Blair opposing what was going on with the PJAC and the USARK and these guys, is that if we as fish keepers and hobbyists want to proliferate these species, we need to start buying from aquaculture locations fish that we know are not just direct imports, places that are selling fish that are actually aquacultured. The yellow tangs that I talked about earlier, which I think I got sidetracked from finishing the story, but I guess if you've been here long enough, you'll be able to piece everything together. Who knows? Yellow tangs were being caught wild in Hawaii. Everyone was opposed to that being legislated to stop allowing people for fishing yellow tangs for the hobby in Hawaii. When Heiko Blair stood up and was very animated about it, is that he was stating basically what I believe is that aquaculture systems should be set up in a country like the United States that have all of the resources that you could possibly imagine to be aquaculturing these fish. Yellow tangs, since when this meeting happened, I think the first 5 or 6 batches of yellow tangs had been bred in captivity. Those were the first ones. They had been captive bred. And the opinion was, instead of fundraising to get rid of legislation like people fishing out in the wild just to collect wild stuff for the sake of avoiding the cost of running an actual aquaculture, farm, right? Of going, why don't we take that money and put it towards aquaculturing the stuff that we know is born and raised in the United States? There's a large there's a large presence on YouTube that used to sell American-raised shrimp. They no longer do that anymore. They import foreign shrimp because it's cheaper, because they don't want to invest in the infrastructure, which is the exact problem we've been running into in the United States for the last 70 years. And we don't want to invest in the infrastructure of the things that are going on here in the United States because it's difficult, because it costs money, because you got to put effort into it and you got to maintain it. It's much easier to buy cheap stuff that was illegally caught, or maybe not even illegally caught, to buy cheap stuff from overseas, bring it in, drop ship it in, throw it in your tank, boom, you sell it. There you go. It's no longer your problem. And then you end up with Ellobiopsidae everywhere in the hobby with a whole bunch of people that have no idea how to deal with it, right? You end up shipping diseases all over the world that were very isolated and that are now everywhere, right? And you also end up with the problem that we have now. We have basic legislation. We have no description of fish. We have a bunch of people in the United States that generally follow the street names of fish because they call it, it's like, is it a celestial pearl danio? Is it a, it's a neon tetra, right? Whereas one of the big differences that I am super jealous of is, for instance, in Europe, they utilize Latin names for stuff that's sold in stores because it's described. It has a Latin name, right? Anyhow, sorry, I got distracted. I started reading the chat. Yeah, I don't know. I got totally distracted. I lost my train of thought. But Surf City Cichlid says, is there an option? Could we enforce an import tariff to assist with classification? Are you opposed to all wild imported fish? So I'm not opposed to wild imported fish if the fishery is being managed, just the same way that we import fish for food. Like the fishery, you have to show that the fishery is being managed and healthy. Chilean toothfish is a perfect example of a fish that one of the big reasons that any kind of acknowledgement had been brought to it, it's called sea bass. If you go to a restaurant, it'll say that it's sea bass. A bunch of chefs in the United States had to get together and say, we're not going to put sea bass on our menus anymore because the Chilean toothfish was being fished and exploited to extinction, and it wasn't going to exist anymore. And most of the fish that was coming into the States didn't have a tag on it, right? Didn't have the proper tagging on it to say, hey, this was caught, this was tracked, we know what's going on, this is from a legal fishery. So the guys that are operating legally are getting dinged because people are operating illegally out of it. Now, Chile said, we're doing the best we can, but they go out into international waters, and there really isn't much that we can do about it once they're out into international waters because guess what? There's really no infrastructure on the ground to make sure that whoever is coming in actually has the proper tags and whatnot to maintain the fishery. So it literally had to come down to a bunch of chefs in the United States refusing to purchase said thing, but guess what? A bunch of chefs in the United States didn't seem to care and just continued to buy it, and the market still exists, so there's still illegal fishery going on with the Chilean toothfish. But as far as like the hobby goes, there's really nobody looking into where any of this stuff goes. But it is cheaper to bring in imported fish. That's the reason why like Petco, PetSmart, all these places are happy to utilize it because it's cheaper to purchase it. It's cheaper to purchase it considered as a raw good. You buy this raw good, it's cheaper. There you go. Hey, the bottom line, what's up? Right? So that's really the issue, is that could we enforce an import tariff to assist with classification? The import tariff doesn't do anything on the other end. You see what I'm saying? If you put an import tariff on something, the people that buy it here pay that tariff. Okay? So let's say I buy 500 neon tetras from China, right? And there's a 25% import tariff on everything that comes from China or whatever the hell it is. I pay that on my end, and it goes to the U.S. It goes to the U.S. government, right? So when there's a tariff, I pay it. I pass it on to you guys. Nothing happens. Everything happens locally. It doesn't have anything to do with anything else. One of the big reasons that the Lacey Act is important is that it enforces laws on the other end, right? So let's say we stick with China just for whatever reason. It doesn't matter. Whatever other country. There's 265 of them to choose from. Pick one. If you're going to import from there and they have specific laws regarding what it is, we have to comply with those as a purchaser on this end, right? So if you wanted to buy that Chilean toothfish, for instance, if it doesn't have the proper documentation of an actual fisherman that's working within an actual fishery, that they have a quota that they're following and they're actually doing what they're supposed to do, here's the paperwork, the provenance that says we caught this fish. It doesn't matter if there's no way to really enforce it. Whereas in the States, it can be directly enforced because you're breaking the law on the other end, right? Because you've just decided, like, well, I'm not going to follow any of the rules. I'm just going to do whatever I want. I'm going to buy this cheap thing, and it'll go away. Now, I can give you a specific example of why this is important in the States. A friend of mine, his name is Jason. I'm just going to give you his real name because you could look it up if you wanted to. Owned a restaurant in Juneau, Alaska. Now, if you've ever heard of Alaska or if you've ever been to Alaska before, you will understand seafood is big there, right? You got a seafood restaurant in Alaska, and one of those is halibut, right? If you've ever been halibut fishing or if you've ever seen somebody do halibut fishing, it's actually real easy. It's not a difficult one. As long as you got a boat, you got a weight, and you got line, and you got bait, you're probably going to catch a halibut. It's not that difficult. Now, if you're a local, you get an X amount of quota of halibut fish that you can catch every day as part of the quota for you being an Alaska State resident or even you just being there, right? So if you as a guest go out on a boat, you get a specific quota of how many halibut you can catch as just a guest. You're visiting, right? You're like, hey, I came up here and I'm fishing with my buddy Randall, right? And you out there, you fishing, and you doing your thing. The quota goes up because you're on the boat, right? Hey, the water box. It's good to see you, buddy. We'll talk soon. Hit the like button on your way out. And subscribe and become a member today. It's very important. Or not. Anyhow, what happened is he's running his restaurant and he was buying fish. And when you buy your fish at a restaurant, it has specific tags, has specific paperwork that says this is where it was fished. It went here. It went there. It came here. I've got the tags on it. You take those tags as a chef, even as a chef, you take those tags off the box and you put them in a thing and you hold on to them until I forget what the standard is. 180 days, 90 days. I forget what it is. There's a standard amount of days that you got to have them. There's a standard amount of days that you got to have them. And that's how long you hold on to them as on the purchasing end, right? As the chef, just the guy who's the chef. Now, what was happening is that his fish supplier was going out and was catching fish and then didn't have enough tags to sell off the fish that he had because he wanted to sell the fish. He wasn't legally allowed to sell the fish because you can't just go out there pulling out fish and then selling it for cash, right? Because the quota of the fish that he was selling for cash was his personal fish, essentially, right? Crypt Keeper says 90 days for shellfish until sold on finfish. Yeah, that's right. Yes. Good. Nice. That's what I think. That's where I was getting confused. I think it's 90 days for shellfish. But anyhow, so what was happening is he just kept buying his halibut without checking his paperwork, and unfortunately, what ended up happening was the Fish and Wildlife reps up. I don't know exactly which agency it was that figured it out. So don't quote me on that. But they figured out that this guy was selling fish. He was selling it to this restaurant, to that restaurant, the other restaurant, blah blah blah. Right now, the other restaurants that he was selling it to, all got hit with the exact same "you're in trouble," right? Got arrested, got charged, the same crime. And all the other restaurants were looking at what was going on. You know, they pled not guilty. They went through evidence, things that are going on. And they had to pay a fine. They kind of pay a fairly significant fine, but not like the craziest amount of money, right? I think it was like $20,000 or something like that, which sucks, but it's okay. Now, my buddy decided to fight it, and he decided to fight it without legal representation. He decided to fight it on his own. He kept fighting it and kept fighting it and kept fighting it and kept fighting it, kept doing all this stuff, filing all this crazy paperwork that was completely inaccurate, wasn't right. And eventually, they sent him to jail because the court system was super fed up with this guy who didn't have the provenance, who basically kind of knew he was just buying halibut from the guy, right? And eventually said, fine, if you want to finish this episode of your life, we're going to go ahead and send you to jail for a while. And he ended up going to jail for a bit. And the funny thing is, in hindsight, he specifically was like, I was actually in the wrong. Like, I knew what I was supposed to be doing. I wasn't doing it, and I just got super mad about it, and I ended up fighting it until they sent me to jail, right? And it's a bummer. It's a bummer that anybody would have to go to jail for fish stuff. I can say I've specifically know somebody who's been sent to jail for buying fish, which is just a bonkers thing to be able to say. But I love Jason to death. He's doing fine now. There's no problem. He's not buying any. He's not buying any illegal fish. I'll tell you that. He's not buying any illegal fish anymore. But just as an anecdotal example, is that guy who'd been illegally selling that fish, he'd been doing it for 9 years. Was all they had figured out, right? That's one guy out of thousands of guys up in Alaska doing the exact same thing day in and day out and day in and day out, and putting the exact same pressure on the fishery like as to what the loggers were doing when old Ronaldo Reaganopoulos came flying over Washington State and thought that the devastation from the volcano was so mind-bendingly bad that he had to say something about it, and it turned out this was just the logging that hadn't even got to the volcanic eruption yet, right? And it's that exact same issue, is that every single day, day in, day out, you start to accumulate these numbers, right? Because, oh, I just took 50 fish today. Oh, I took 100 fish the next day. Oh, 100 fish the next day. And it turns out there's 1,000 people doing it, and they're doing it every single day, over and over and over and over again. And when the fishery gets depleted, it's done, right? We all understand what it's like to buy a bag of potato chips, correct? When you buy a bag of potato, I mean, it's only half full because of the shipping air, right? You got to have that air for the shipping. Hello. But you go, we're like never going to eat this whole bag of potato chips. But a couple people take some out, a couple people take some out, a couple people take some out, a couple people take some out. Before you know it, you got an empty bag and you throw it in the garbage, which is generally made out of plastic that will never deteriorate and will probably just live on in eternity forever in a landfill that that we've likely never visited and we'll probably never see. So it's just whatever. It's all good. Aquarium Co-op is here, says I missed it, but I'm glad to see Joel talking about it. I had a video coming out about it as well. I'm guessing we're similar on it. I don't know, Corey. I don't know how your business would personally be affected by it or not or anything like that. I can't claim to understand the inner workings of every business out there. I don't know that much. As I talked about it earlier in the show, I've had access to wholesalers. But they're wholesalers that Aquarium Co-op doesn't use, so I don't mind still having access to those things. Like I said earlier, they never change their software or update anything, or So my old passwords from like 10 years ago still work, so I can pop on there and like look at stuff. And anyhow. Aquacultured fish are far more expensive than imported fish. So generally speaking, what people lean into in the business is buying the imported fish because it's much cheaper to buy cheaper goods, right? You're buying cheaper stock to resell, right? Down the line. You buy cheap, you sell high, right? It's like Glengarry, Glen Ross, buy low, sell high. So a lot of places will defer to buying the imported stuff that's much cheaper, that's likely not regulated, that probably has a lot of fishy business going on. You know what I'm saying? Fishy business. But a lot of that has been going on in this industry year after year after year after year. And I know that Corey remembers this because I know Corey was there, but when Heiko was yelling at these PJAC guys, at these US ARC guys, and the other people that were the other groups that were there that were trying to just fight legislation just for the sake of fighting legislation, which does happen in the United States, guys. I hope you guys understand that. People fight legislation regardless of whether it's good or bad. It's an ongoing nonsense in the U.S. And what ends up ultimately happening is like guys like Heiko go, we need to start funding aquaculture programs in the United States around the yellow tangs so that yellow tangs can be affordable, so that we can maintain their population in the hobby and we can maintain their population in the wild, so that we don't need to continue extracting from the wild population just for the sake of selling cheap fish, right? When we were there, it was phrased as Hawaiian fishermen are going to be put out of business, right? Now, the real question is, how many jobs are we talking about? Because I believe at the time, there was 30 fishermen that do that, which is unfortunate that those guys might lose a portion of their job, right? But there's probably a way to take care of 30 people, correct? Or 40 people, or 50 people. That shouldn't be an issue with a population close to 350 million, right? Shouldn't be an issue. I don't think it should be an issue. And a lot of where I stand is that the companies that are selling these fish should be on the front end and the back end of maintaining healthy populations for sale, because admittedly, these fish are for sale for a hobby, right? These are hobby fish. These are fish that aren't being sold because you are starving, right? And so that's my reasoning behind it, is that the hobby is not essential in the point of going like the salmon fishery that we talked about earlier. People need food to live. I don't know anybody who's never eaten any food in the entirety of their life, right? You need food. It's a necessity. You can't just choose to opt out of it, right? But you could certainly choose to save and put your money into a hobby that you like doing, that you might have to save for a little bit longer in order to buy something, right? And if that's the reality of making a better world and making a world that's better to maintain and taken care of, that's what I endorse, right? I endorse that. I fully endorse that, because why would you endorse something else? Why would you sit around and fearmonger about these 20 talking points that they literally have put on their website? Talking points, right? They've put talking points on their website about, here's all the things that you're supposed to drum up all the fear-mongering about, right? You're supposed to fearmonger about these 22 talking points. As like 17 here, it's the talking point number 17 says, rather than this knee-jerk reaction, which, by the way, knee-jerk reaction is not a little bit of a loaded, that's pretty loaded language as far as I could tell. Any interstate movement ban or whitelist, blacklist scenario should include reforms to the injurious listing process, including proof of widespread impact based on sound peer-reviewed science. Okay. Who's going to fund that if no one ever funds it, or if no one ever puts anything in, right? Yeah, and so, Corey in the chat said, in a longer version, I'm on the same page. Honestly, most hobby fish could cost 5 times, and we'd still keep them, but instead of having 10 aquariums, we'd have 2. And it's something that he and I specifically together, that's the only reason I bring it up, is that we specifically have observed the hobby in other parts of the world and gone, wow, you really don't need a basement full of 100 aquariums in order to enjoy this hobby, or a giant fish room. Like, I have a small fish room, which, by the way, I have a bunch of tanks. So I hope you guys understand that. I'm not arguing against people having a bunch of tanks or having access to collecting a bunch of fish. If this is the hobby that you want to invest your money in, just the same as I don't give grief to guys that collect car parts because they like building cars, and then you find out that they have like a $40,000 Camaro or something that they built from the ground up in their garage. I don't criticize those guys either. I applaud them for being motivated and taking care of the thing that taking care of the hobby that you like to do and putting energy into it. That's great. There's nothing wrong with that, but you don't have to be doing that in order to enjoy this hobby. It's a possibility for you, as I showed you guys Johan's apartment in the Netherlands, in the EU, where things are regulated way heavier than they are in the United States currently. Currently, right now, the United States doesn't have really any regulation, let's be honest. And most of it's all skirted around because you fly in somewhere. I've met a bunch of plant collectors that literally just collect plants and carry them with them and just lie when they bring them back. I met a plant collector in, I don't remember where I was. Chicago or something? I don't know. I met a plant collector that was talking about how they found Bucephalandra out in the wild, didn't have the identifier for it, didn't have it identified at all, so they actually just taped it to themselves under their shirt, which is weird because I feel like you're really running the risk of them thinking you're bringing in drugs, obviously, right? And you're going to get a whole bunch of dudes with machine guns arresting you at the airport, but that's what they did. They could have been lying. They might have been liars. I don't know. But it's one of those things. It's like, as is highlighted in the bill, if they're already in the States, they're on the whitelist. So, and the argument is they aren't described. Well, if you don't have a good description of the thing that you're importing and reselling, are you really being that responsible, realistically? Especially a lot of this commentary has come from certain people who have been in the hobby for, 50 years or something as a professional business owner and stuff. where's their responsibility? If they've owned a business for this long, they're doing all this stuff, why haven't they advocated to get this stuff identified so that they could actually, I don't know, show off the responsibility of free market capitalism and show that it works, right? Yeah. I agree with what you want to see. Also, this drafting is just too brief for my comfort. Okay, like, this is how bills work, okay? like, if bills were even more expansive than they really were before, okay, here's a good example. The Affordable Care Act, right? One of the biggest mechanisms in the Affordable Care Act was if everybody was paying in to health insurance in the United States, it would therefore be illegal for companies to price gouge anybody in the United States because the U.S. government could represent an individual in prosecuting companies who were overcharging for healthcare. Now, that is just like that's the shortest way that I can describe it. Is one of the biggest mechanisms in the Affordable Care Act was to make all citizenry under the same umbrella so that when, I don't know, whatever Pfizer decided that they were going to mark up, I don't know, some cancer treatment 10,000% or something, and it only happened to 5 people, it didn't need to be a class action lawsuit brought upon by thousands and thousands of people in order to levy a class action lawsuit. It could have strictly been brought up by the individual was being price gouged as a U.S. citizen under that requirement. The Department of Justice could immediately investigate and prosecute a company that was doing that, right? 10,000 pages of Affordable Care Act. I forget how long that damn thing was. 8,000 pages or something like that. I tried to read it at the time. I'm going to tell you guys, I tried to read it. I couldn't. It was impossible. It was an insurmountable task to read it. And I don't blame anybody for not reading it because I can read pretty quick. It's hard for me to read and talk out loud. I don't know why. Probably because I've been hit in the head too many times. But I can read pretty quick. I could not get through it. And I really cared about it at the time. And I care about it now. But at the time, I was advocating for it as much as I could. And, of course, fear-mongering, maniacal, weird talk show people, or whatever you call it, like reality TV stars get elected as president now, and they fearmonger about everything all the time, constantly. Have convinced people that it was so bad because people had to pay money, right? Regardless of what their insurance rates are now and how much they pay for those, it didn't really matter. It's just because you were paying some taxes, right? But that was one of the biggest mechanisms that are utilized in other countries, right, on the behalf of the citizenry that doesn't have the resources to go and sue a healthcare company, right? You don't have the money to do that. The only person in the chat that has said that they have a lawyer on retainer is the Secret History Living in Your Aquarium. We could verify that or not. He said it was your best friend, which might be a breach of, I don't know, who knows? That's weird. But that's the only person that's ever said that they have a lawyer on retainer. But, with that, I don't know, maybe everybody has a lawyer on retainer and they just never mentioned it. And maybe you guys just have like hundreds of thousands of dollars in an account just ready to sue a pharmaceutical company at the drop of a hat just because the prices went up. But, that also begs the question, like, if you've got that kind of money, I bet you would probably just pay for the marked up medicine, right? You see how this is all weird, right? Rommel Bynum says lawmakers and academics write in a language that is meant to bar common people from academic achievement, in my opinion. There's definitely an argument there that like things need to be worded better, right? But they're currently right now, a good example was this litigation that was won in the appellate court against people that were illegally moving invasive species from state to state, because the Constitution says, you know, the federal government can't impede movement in between states. That like they managed to win that case, right? So that's one of the reasons that this is being added on, is that you know, invasive species shouldn't be able to be moved from, say, Wyoming to, I don't know, let's think of a random state, North Carolina, right? Secret History says, I loved when they interviewed people against the Obamacare. They were against Obamacare but hated the ACA. I think they liked the Affordable Care Act, but they hated Obamacare. Yeah. Alex Kumanoff, the Kumanoff, says, you have exceptional tank and are an expert on aquatic plants, grew and bred orchids and terrestrial plants for 40 years, mostly vulnerable species. Okay, don't know what that means. It just sounds like a statement. Who defines what is precise? Well, the court. I mean, the court system. Like, is that... Okay, so laws are written, and then if they're deemed to be either unconstitutional or whatnot, they get challenged in court. And, I mean, like... We talked about this earlier, the three branches of government. Like, we understand what those are, right? I mean, maybe we don't, but yeah. Yes, the three branches of government are the legislative, the judicial, and the executive, right? The judicial branch is all those courts, right? Like, it's not just the Supreme Court, there's all the appellate courts underneath it, right? Like, you know. Surf City Cichlid says, Aubrey, I think the thing that make folks nervous is the vagueness combined with the centralization of enforcement. It makes them feel powerless, and then can lead to that can lead to instability. I'd like to see fewer omnibus bills and make the language more accessible to the average person. I'm not really sure what that's in response to. I think it has to be vague with all of the species in the world and ways they could be exploited. Some gray area has to be allowed for interpretation. So the Secret History living in your aquarium, do the three branches really balance still? I don't know. I mean, you could bring that up on your channel, I guess. I don't know. We could talk about that. I don't have a lot of time left here, but yeah. So one of the reasons that it doesn't have the list of 30,000 fish or whatever people are claiming, however many different types of fish come in. I've looked at fish lists. They're not 30,000 long. I'll tell you that. I've looked at import fish lists. There may be 2,000 species, probably 1,500. At most, and most of them aren't even available when they're on the list. So, you know, if these species need to get described, they need to get described. And there's really no reason other than, like, it costs money, guys. Okay. You know, like, yeah, everything costs money, you know? We're going to build a building. It's going to cost money, man, you know? So, if it's viable to do it, it's viable to do it, but yeah, I don't know. It's a rhetorical question. Yeah. Speaking of money, we didn't even get any members today. Oh well. Oh well. When you go contrary to what is really easy to say, because it's really easy to say legislation is bad, right? It's an easy statement. It's a really easy statement to say legislation bad. The government's overreaching. It's super easy to say all that stuff because people have always had, generally speaking, some kind of negative experience with the government. More often than not, it's like a parking ticket, a speeding ticket. Maybe you got arrested at some point. Maybe you got a fine for something. You know, most people have had an anecdotal negative experience. Or like when you get your paycheck, there's this money that's taken, right? Of which I've regularly had all sorts of like crazy conversations with people that are like, there's potholes in the road. What are you talking about? And it's like, I mean, I would encourage you guys to go to some countries where they don't have the access to things like they do in the EU and America, you know, Canada, Mexico, the UK, Australia, you know, I mean, go to some of those countries and then be like, oh man, they took some tax money, right? They took some tax money. Right. We got it. It's difficult here. I get it. It is 100%. I agree with you. It is difficult here. It's a different difficult. We have different problems. We have different issues that we got to deal with than other countries do. It's probably equally as difficult, but it's definitely different, right? It's definitely different difficulties. And a good example of that would be I tried to talk to some people on the old Boomer book about how I find it strange when really abusive, terrible people in life are existing and harming other people around them, and then when it comes time and they pass away, they all of a sudden are the best person that there ever was. And I find it strange. And I don't think it's human nature. I think it's human, like, I think humans invented it and we've been keeping it going, right? I don't really have a great way to explain that, but humans invented this and they've kept it going for a long time. That like, you don't speak ill will of the dead, right? And it's like, well, Jeffrey Dahmer sucked. That guy sucked, and I don't care. Don't care that he's not around anymore. That guy was awful. There was not any good parts about that guy. Now, I don't think he should have been executed by the state. It's ridiculous that he got killed in custody. That's awful. That part's awful because I wouldn't want that on anybody, right? But I'm not sad that he's gone, and I certainly wouldn't have been like, oh, Jeffrey Dahmer, here's some pictures of us hanging out, and he was such a good guy, and he's going to be missed, and blah, 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 right? And it's like, what is happening here? And I've also seen that this specific interaction only continues to harm the people still around the situation within itself, right? And the most recent example I can give of that is a friend of mine's brother relapsed if you're not in Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous or somebody who's ever had drug problems or whatever, a relapse is somebody gets sober for a significant period of time and they fall off the wagon. There we go. That's probably a better way to term it. This person fell off the wagon, overdosed, and died, which is tragic, and it's awful. And it's not normal when a 44-year-old man is just found dead, right? That's not normal. That's not something that normally happens. It's pretty rare that people die at that age. That's not something that is super common. So naturally, what ends up happening is people are intrigued. What happened? What happened, guys? And one of the things that I saw was Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and probably whatever other social medias that they happen to be on. Anytime that they were online, somebody would be asking them what happened to their brother. Then they would have to go through the trauma again to explain it. So what ends up happening is that the person who is essentially closest to the situation, most traumatized by the situation, continues to get exposed to that trauma, right? Because they have to explain it, let people know what's going on, and basically live through the experience again. So I've been thinking about this for like the last, 5 months or something like that. The thing that was even worse is that the elderly parents were constantly having to field phone calls because, people that hadn't been online in a month, or people that whatever, I logged into my Facebook account and I found out that this person passed away. I'm going to call their parents, right? And find out what's going on, because it had been so vaguely posted that, and basically every post was, here's us in college having a party time. Oh man, you'll be lost. Rest in peace, right? And so the parents had to continually be going through this trauma of getting phone calls from older family and or not family, but like family friends and people from high school, and all sorts of random people were contacting them all the time, until my friend put together a really comprehensive, here's what happened. Here's the person, here's when they passed away, here's how they passed away, here's why. Here's even a donation page if you want to donate in their name to help with recovery and drug addiction services and whatnot. And so the other day, I kind of posted about this of like, what's going on here? Like, what's going on where we just sort of turn our back on how these people existed, and then just be like, oh, well, they will be loved, right? Because what it's essentially doing is you're not healing the people that know, right? You're re-traumatizing the people close to the situation because they're having to tell you what happened. And you're also you're also not engaging the people that this loss could possibly help, right? I recently was yelled at, like online, I guess yelled at, air quotes, by somebody who was just posting and posting and posting and commenting and commenting and commenting like crazy about how no one in addiction ever learns from somebody's death. No one ever does this. No one ever does that. Passing all these prescriptions onto things, which I thought was pretty much the absolute opposite of what my experience has been. One of the statements that was made was, people have to hit rock bottom in order to get sober. And I can tell you, not only from my personal experience, but hundreds of people that I've talked to in recovery, that is not true. You do not need to hit rock bottom. This is a nonsensical, just a nonsensical bullshit statement that is passed out there. And essentially what ends up happening is people that are addicted, that have alcohol problems, that are affected by this disease, to have an excuse to go, oh, well, I haven't hit rock bottom yet. When the literature that I would refer to, commonly referred to as the Big Book, actually describes that Alcoholics Anonymous is designed for the people who aren't at rock bottom. They're called middle bottoms. They're called people that are just effing up their lives, but for instance, still have a house, right? And it's a very negative situation, and I understand that. And it's a very difficult situation to have conversations like this, and thusly, that is my point. The people are being traumatized for no reason, right? And I think it's a human invention that is being carried on. And I think it parallels the exact same thing of any legislation is bad legislation, right? It's bad because it's bad. Well, what's a loaf of bread? You can't define it as a loaf of bread, right? You can't just say, hey, what's a loaf of bread? And your answer is, well, it's a loaf of bread. It's made of bread. And it's the same kind of situation here with what I would consider to have a piece of legislation that looks like it has funding behind it in order to move forward, so that we don't have the same continued situation that we have now of fisheries being overfished, importing fish with no documentation, wild-caught fish being so cheap that it's the only avenue for anybody to operate, right? If you want to become a fish breeder in the United States, it's virtually impossible because you're competing with the wild-caught market that more often than not is probably coming from somewhere illegally caught, right? Kumanoff, I don't know what this is. Senate is most unequal legislative body in body. Bribes are big in Congress and Mexico. Okay, I don't know what that means. M. Green, 2000. Jeb through Florida elections for shrub. Since then, politics is BS. I don't know. To assume that the people in the Senate aren't representing their people and the people's opinions is ridiculous. Like, of course senators aren't perfect, right? But if they aren't representing the will of their people, they shouldn't get reelected, correct? Guess what? We're a pretty split country when it comes down to it. There's a lot of people over here, there's a lot of people over there, and there's a lot of people in the middle. One of the things that I've continued to hammer upon and tried to explain to people is that a lot of the people in the middle just don't vote, right? This last election was the most people have ever voted that have ever voted, right? For the president. And I think the statistic was like 107 million people just didn't vote. Right? And if those people had voted for a candidate, they would have won the popular vote by a landslide. So that's where my advocacy is as far as those prescriptions go. Is that like the senators from Washington State are pretty much supporting the will of the people, right? That elected them. That's more or less what's happening. And as far as I constantly would criticize Ted Cruz, he keeps getting elected. The people vote for him because they like him, because they think that he's doing what they want to, right? So, you know, just to throw the blanket claim out there that everybody's corrupt is just, it's impossibly difficult, because it's basically like a conversation killer where you just go like, it's bad. Oh, what? It's corrupt. Okay. Yeah. I mean, if you had something that you wanted passed, you would want to be able to lobby and advocate for it, correct? My criticisms for like this U.S. ARC and PJAC and whatnot isn't the fact that they lobby, right? My criticism is that they collect money from companies that are sort of diametrically opposed to my specific beliefs and how we should operate in the world. And they represent those, they represent it in the way that those people want it represented. Like I said earlier, ZooMed is the top funder for U.S. ARC. So if you don't like the content on USARK, you probably shouldn't buy ZoomEd stuff, right? If you don't like the content on here, if you don't like this inflammatory language, if you don't like this, here's all the talking points that you should go out there and spread rhetoric around. I mean, it's literally on their website. It's not secret. I'm not exposing secret documents, right? The documents are here on their website, and you can go look at them. You can judge for yourself and say, hey, I like this wild rhetoric. This is what I like. Okay, you're free to do that. It's America. It's all good, baby. You're free to be right. You're free to be wrong. You're free to be indifferent. You're free to do whatever. I don't encourage people to be wrong and indifferent and just choose not to advocate for the things that they like. I want people to advocate for the things that they like and have an opportunity to advocate for the things that they like. I don't know what DK is saying. It doesn't make any sense. But we got to give a shout out to Hunter for becoming a member today. Oh my God. The membership button actually works. Hunter S has actually proved that the membership button works. And I thought Super Chats was broken too. But Kelly Foreman proved that the Super Chat button actually does work. I just assumed it was broken. I just assumed like the buttons don't work, you know? That's my assumption, is that the computer's buttons are broken, right? That's got to be it. I think realistically, if I sit down and I go like, why doesn't ZoomEd sponsor my channel $100,000 a year? I mean, you could give me some rhetorical talking points, and I can always just throw them out there. I mean, 22 seems like a lot, but hey, $100,000 a year, why not, baby? Yeah. Elephanto King Superb, you should talk about mental health care in America. Yikes. Yes, that actually was part of the Affordable Care Act. I think DK got the word wrong. You got the wrong spelling, not really sure. At S, what does S say? Can we play the song I'm Just a Bill? Oh, I get demonetized immediately and a copyright strike if I play music. I played the girl from Ipanema the other day, and I had to put loud rap music over it so I could get rid of the copyright claim. So I put really loud, boisterous. Maybe I put really loud, boisterous rap music over that segment, and then the copyright claim was dropped. So, but it's not like anybody really watches my show after they've aired. So whatever, it's all good. It's not like it really ruined anybody's day. Yeah. Oh, maybe it did. I don't know, but nobody left a comment because nobody leaves comments on my videos, which is very interesting because I'd always think that I always talk about wacky stuff, and you would think that more people would leave comments or whatever, but they don't. Let me think. Let me look here. Where are my? That's why I got to go to. Yeah, I've been on YouTube for 14 years or something. I don't even know where the buttons are anymore. Who knows? Let's see. See comments. Oh my God, we have comments on last Friday's video. The comment says "Toad the Wet Sprocket" from Nanette Lai, but she's not a member, so who knows what's going on there. Preston John says, check your own typos, my new favorite quote, which is true. Somebody was yelling at me in the chat and then got all pissy because they had typos, which was, hey man, I didn't type it out for you. I told you I'm like Ron Burgundy. I'm going to read it, and then it's my fault if I end up making fun of you because you did it wrong. Jacob Richardson in the chat, I got to answer this because it's so important. Do you trim your goatee yourself or by a barber? It looks awesome. I actually do it myself because the barber goes crazy. If I ever have the barber do it, you can't trust her. But I let her. Oh, so I let my barber's a lady, by the way. lady barber. I let her trim my eyebrows a while back. Not voluntarily. She always asked me if she was going to trim my eyebrows, and I always say no because they grow out all owly. They grow out like all crazy out here, like you remember the owl from How Many Licks to the Center of the Tootsie Pop? It's like that. And I always said no, and she'd be like, dude, what's the deal? They're ridiculous. And I'd be like, I don't know. I just want them long because I'm a ridiculous person. But then one day she just trimmed them. She trimmed one of them, and then, you got to do the other one because it was too late. She was like, it's ridiculous. We're trimming your eyebrows. They're out of control. She just cut one of them. I was like, well, one of them's trimmed. Now you're living it. And I was like, well, all right. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? Like fight and, I think she said she's 72, like a 72-year-old Korean woman. Like, it seems that would be outrageous. There's no reason. So I just I just laughed because it actually was realistically funny. There's a lot going on in my head about what it was funny, but we both laughed and we had a good time. So it actually worked out pretty good. Oh my God, we have a super comment here from Shelby Ray Lane, who is also not a member, but has the top commenter badge. So, I'm publicly subscribed for 2 years, which I would have thought Shelby Ray was, I thought Shelby Ray was subscribed longer than 2 years, but hey man, the computers, they don't make it up. Whew. This is a long comment. We're going to read through it. You were so dead on right about people today and so feisty. I'm still breaking out in laughter periodically. Swatting Jeffro on an Aquarium fish channel where he was live streaming. I was watching his channel when it happened. It was so surreal, like WTF is even happening here. Yeah, it's very true. It was one of the worst things. It's just disgusting. If you support the police, don't do it. If you support people, don't do it. If you support anybody, it is a ridiculously stupid idea. It puts everybody in danger for no benefit, and you're going to go to jail. They're going to find you. They do. They always find the people that do that. No one's ever gotten away with it. It's just a stupid idea. Okay. And yes, these hunks of smegma that troll, stalk, and escalate to threats against your family should be charged and put in prison, which generally they get caught. Even the old school violent mafia knew they had an agreement that wives and children were off limits. Yep. Have you checked with Frank about any new place to make sure he will find a new attic or basement suitable? It's a good point. As you guys know, we're looking for a new property. One of the contingencies of that is a decent fish room for, what's the word? What am I thinking of here? What happened? I lost my train of thought. I read a comment and I lost my train of thought. Oh, we're buying a new property, and one of the big reasons for it is to build a new fish rooms for new projects and building new projects for the YouTube channel to make content about it, make videos. As you guys know, I've been working on videos and then kind of scrapping them and then kind of going back, and I've been doing that for about a year now, and we'll have content coming out in the future for sure. But it's kind of where we're at right now. I've just been practicing and kind of just working on stuff and been busy with other jobs and everything. So the unfortunate thing is YouTube doesn't pay my bills. Obviously, you guys contribute, and I'm eternally grateful. I really am. I don't have words to express how great my gratitude. So, I don't know. But I do appreciate it, but unfortunately, if I could, if I could fund paying my mortgage and childcare and all the crazy nonsense that I got to pay for out of YouTube, I would do it, but that's not where it's at. As you guys know, I work for Aquarium Co-op, building and maintaining equipment and all that kind of stuff, and I'm eternally grateful for that position. It's a wonderful company to work for. Everybody there is just badass. Like, I really don't have like a lot of negativity, and that's basically why I work there, man. Like, everybody there is cool and smart and pretty educated and open. I don't know, man. I don't have Hold on. Not sponsored by Aquarium Co-op, but maybe sponsored by Aquarium Co-op. Who knows? I don't know. Have you checked with Frank? I have checked with Frank about being in the new place. He says, he gave me the measurements for, his needs, I guess would be the easy way to put it, and some certain things that he was looking for to be able to continue to live in the attic. I don't really want him to have to be in the basement. It's oftentimes it's a little moist in the basement and whatnot, and we don't really want to put him in that situation. If you guys are wondering who Frank is, he is first to comment. And so the long-standing joke is that he's first in the chat most often. So the joke is that he's in my attic, and I give him a heads up whenever I put the live stream together. I'm reading off the teleprompter. You check your typos. Yeah, I think a lot of people are laughing about me yelling at somebody for not checking their typos. And it's not that you aren't checking your typos. I understand. You like swiping, you're chatting on your phone or whatever. People are going to screw things up on a regular basis. But they got all mad at me after me reading it incorrectly and not knowing what was going on. And then it was kind of like chewing me out. It was like, what? How's this my fault? Like, yeah, I don't know. I got defensive. It's my fault. Still. People are asking where am I reading this comment from? It's from Friday's video. It's from Friday's live stream. I live stream Mondays and Fridays. So if you like what you see here and you want to see more of it, become a member and super chat your whole entire bank account. That's how that works. Kelly Foreman, $5.99, proving me wrong that the super chat button actually does work. Well, thank you. Very much appreciate it. Secret History with a $5 super chat says, take it easy, Joel. Have a good one. I agree with most of what you say, but would love to chat more on my channel if you'd like. Yeah, man, just we'll figure out a time. Or even tomorrow, you could probably come on Dr. Black, and because on Tuesday nights, U.S., I go live with Dr. Black, and we talk about all sorts of stuff, mainly Star Wars, because we like Star Wars a lot, but we're both fish tank nerds. So occasionally people come in and they're like, what should I put with my blue Akara? And we're like, oh, snap, let's go. Let's talk about fish stuff. All right. But we mostly talk about Star Wars and just whatever, dude. Music. I don't know. We're just weirdos over there. And I don't really like promote it too much, but that's what we're doing. And it's not monetized, so we just kind of do whatever. So if you've ever heard a swear over there, it was what it was. And yeah. Crypt Keeper. I have a flexible time because of scheduling concerns is a thing I have to deal with, because the reality is, like, I think, like, if I was like full-time YouTube, I would do like a much longer Monday and Friday show. I think realistically what I would probably do is stream on Mondays and Fridays for like probably 6 or 7 hours and just call it the work day on those days, and then do video production the other days if that what was going on. But that's not the case. So I normally do like 2 hours, and sometimes it's 11, sometimes it's 1, sometimes it's 3. You just kind of never really know what's going on. Yeah. And it's unfortunate. I wish I could stay to a perfect schedule, but I do have to kind of move things around an hour or two here or there, that kind of stuff. But it is what it is. As long as you are subscribed and you have the notification bell, or if you become a member, you can get access to the Discord chat. You can actually get access to the Minecraft server, whole bunch of stuff that you can do. And once you're part of the community, you got 24 access to our Discord server, and we're always on there chatting about fish and whatever. Oh, I did post a book that has been censored on my community tab. You guys can go check that out. I mentioned earlier that we're sort of passively sponsored by Amazon. So, like, if you go buy things on an Amazon link, it doesn't really matter what you buy, as long as you just go through the Amazon link. We'll get like a commission basically, on the advertising end of things. So this book was recently banned in Tennessee and a few other states, and it's spreading quickly. And they're kicking Art Spiegelman's mouse out of school because of naked mice, I believe, is the issue that they claim that there are naked mice in that book. But it is a fantastic read. I 100% recommend it to anybody, because if you kind of want to get an idea of the polarization that is being pushed in the United States, this book will explain a lot of why that is happening in a really accessible way. Like I believe. I think we read this in the 9th grade or something like that. So it's really like, if you think you're as smart as a high schooler, then you'll be pretty good. Will M with a $20 super chat says, "Love you, brother. You've convinced me to get my sump going. Waiting on the supplies to come in. It will be my first." Hey man, thank you for the $20 super chat. First off, second all, it's a reality that my opinion is that sumps are extraordinarily helpful on a lot of setups. Not all of them, for sure. It really, it's not every single aquarium will do better with a sump. It's not every single application, 100%. And I would never claim that at all. There are definitely certain situations where a canister filter is best, or a hang-on back filter is best, or even just no filter is best with just some plants. What's her name? Oddball Aquatics. Like, she does a whole bunch of stuff where I think she threw out all of her filters. I'm not 100% sure what's going on there. But yeah, strong advocacy there of the plants or the filter, which is how people like me really got into the hobby realistically. Takashi Amano, with all of his plant tank photography, was just so amazing to me, and the access of being a poor chef, guy running restaurants, not making a whole lot of money, living in a crappy apartment in Seattle, and having access to a form of horticulture that I could experience within living in a crappy apartment in Fremont was really what got me back into keeping aquariums, maintaining aquariums, learning about aquariums, building setups and all that kind of stuff. And you know, I think the dirted tank phenomenon was back then, probably like 15 years ago, something like that, 2007, 2006, was really big back then. I've battled against it, because does it work? Yes. Is it long-term beneficial? Really, no. It's really not. So I think it's a really fun temporary thing to set up. And I know that there are people out there that have had tanks for a really long time with some dirt in them or whatnot or whatever. But very rarely has any of that been distinctly verifiable as to what it is that they're doing in their aquarium. Most people refuse to track or even follow any kind of scientific method. So it's almost always hearsay from weird grifters that are just like, dirt your aquarium, it's the cheap way. Like, okay, well, is there old banana peels in that dirt or what? What are you putting in there? You don't know. Had my big spine surgery 2 days ago, and I'm trying not to do the whole pain med thing, so I'll try and join Dr. Black, but I can't promise, for he is a jolly good bloke. Oh, you had spine surgery? I didn't even know. I don't know. Yeah, hey, man, like, I apologize. I don't watch YouTubers unless somebody sends something to me, as far as, like, the fish tube people. Like, I watch Aquarium Co-op, and who else? I watch Aquarium Co-op, and yeah, I think that's it. I don't know. I don't really watch other fish YouTubers. A lot of the big ones I don't really get along with. A lot of people post like weird stuff. And I really can't have this many notifications. I can't have this many notifications coming onto my phone when I'm subscribed, because it literally is just a lot of the same video over and over again of like, hey guys, I'm gonna do a open box of I got a light in. I'm gonna do a unboxing of the light, and it's like I'm gonna be brutally honest with you guys, like I don't find that interesting. Like I don't care if there's styrofoam in the box or plastic in the box. I don't know. I assume it's shipped and it didn't break. Like how does the light work? But most places don't. Most videos and stuff like that don't really want to, show you 6 months later or whatever, So. Yeah, I don't really like watch. I used to kind of watch some live. I used to watch some like live fish keepers or whatever. Like I used to listen to them or whatever. But it's just kind of ridiculous. Master Dex says MD Fish Tanks is a good one for frequent tank builds. Yeah, I mean MD used to come and hang around in my chat and whatnot. He doesn't do that anymore. His channel's big. Yeah, I don't know. The list is pretty long of people that used to come hang out on my channel that ended up getting big. Like, what's his name? I don't want to say his name. The fish tank review guy. Fish for Thought. Yeah, I think I was his first patron. And I tried to do some collaborations with him, and he said that I scared him, so he didn't really want to. And I was like, oh, that's awkward, but all right. Not to like toot my own horn, but yeah, I've been around a long time. So, yeah. Jared Byer's been working from home. Gonna have YouTube up all day if I want. Agreed. To be honest with you, like I don't find the I don't find like the fish tank content like super engaging when it's the same thing like over and over again, where somebody is like, I got a hang on filter and it's dope and it's got foam in it and I took the foam out and I put this in instead. I'm like, I'm not engaged, right? Like I'm not at all engaged in that content. Which is one of the reasons why I was building my plant encyclopedia videos, because I wanted to have like 50 of them to see how well they would do, like how people would engage with them and stuff. I've rewritten not all. I don't want to claim I've rewritten all of them, but I've rewritten a lot of the scripts for those. So like the next series of those is going to start coming out, especially as plants are starting to come back more available. For regular ordering and stuff like that. Obviously the pandemic sort of threw a monkey wrench into sort of everything, right? Like I don't know about you guys, but my life got turned upside down. Like we didn't have daycare. Vicky had to start working from home all the time. There's just like a lot of craziness. And then it was like, did you get COVID? Did you not get COVID? I don't know. I'm sick, but I'm not sick, but I don't know. And we don't have tests. And actually today our United States sponsored tests, 4 tests showed up today from the United States Postal Service. They were delivered. The first case of COVID was in Washington State, which actually is not very far from me because I'm in Washington State. It was in Kirkland, like January 15th or something like that, over 2 years ago. And we just got our first rapid COVID tests 2 years later. Over 2 years. 2 years and 3 weeks or whatever later. So, it's been crazy. Big D Smoke has been stuck home this whole time. I swear to God, I just want to go get voodoo donuts with Dennis. I just want to go get voodoo donuts with Dennis again. We did it once. I want to go again. One of these days, I'm just going to go over to Dennis's house and hang out and just be like, yeah, we're here. Whatever. It's happening. That's what we're doing. Oh, my God. Master Deck says I'm still the OG. I'm not the OG, but I'm just one of them. I think part of MD's popularity is he seems so genuinely into the fish, talking to his fish and getting excited about the fry. Yeah, I mean, obviously he's Rosie. I like MD. I think he's a cool dude. He seems really nice. The interactions I've had with him seem really good. It's pretty clear like has some access to resources in order to do all of those projects all the time and constantly be filming them, editing them, and whatnot. And he's got a lot of tanks. And he's in the UK, so it's less affordable than here. He doesn't have the $1 per gallon sale and that kind of stuff. So, you know, it's a reality. But, yeah, I mean, I like the guy. Here's the deal. I'm not criticizing MD fish tanks, so I hope you guys understand that. But to watch a new tank setup video over and over and over again is not enjoyable for me. It just isn't. Like, I would enjoy it like once or twice or 3 times, and then it's like, here comes the same format of a 28-minute long video of a tank setup that, you know, is not, you know, it just doesn't, it doesn't catch me. It doesn't catch my, like, wow, I really gotta, you know, especially when shows like The Book of Boba Fett exist, where space aliens fly around in ships and people have laser guns. I mean, come on. Laser swords. You know, I'm like, oh, whoa, I'll watch that. That's wild. And to be honest with you, I want to bring that kind of level of creativity to the fish tank videos. Like, that's what I want to do. I want to be able to be working on, like, really creative, immersing content for the fish community, right? And also expand on the documentary type stuff. Like, I want to be able to go film and do a lot more documentarian type things. And the reality of getting to that point seems foreign to me, but it is what it is. Rosie says, yes, I get what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Is like, it's not a criticism of the guy. It's just like, not for me, right? Like, after a couple of times, I'm like, yeah, okay, is there another? Oh, it's the thing again. Okay, got it. Jacob says laser forks. True. Laser forks are important. Master Dex, I'd like to see more people taking risks. I agree. Where are the experiments, etc.? Yeah, I mean, that's really where I want to be able to flex some of the video creative stuff, is to being able to work to be able to how to work on testing, to basically have like an aquarium lab essentially, where we can actually test like 8 different setups all operating in an automated way that's actually testing and regulated properly and getting us readouts. One of the big things that I was working on with a guy that you guys don't know, but he's an automation controller guy. Like, that's his thing. Like, that's what he does. We were working on building essentially like a tank controller that is affordable, that you guys could build yourselves, that has all the probes and dosing and everything built into it. Obviously, the supply chain is crazy, and things are a little bit weird and up in the air on that. And then on top of it, we just kind of pumped the brakes on building that because work is sort of applied in a different direction right now. At some point, you know, we'll implement that plan and order the parts, and then start testing them, and then testing the different variations, and then see what kind of interesting stuff we can come up with about what will work, what won't work. This broke for this reason. So far, I would say we're probably like 90% confidence on the prototypes that we've built so far. So, and then the big downside is like getting the software to integrate properly. Although it seems that we have shareware programs that we're able to utilize that will definitely work in the meantime before developing like a specific piece of software to operate all that stuff, right? So you basically would just download and then update and do a few things within a piece of software, and then you'd be able to control it from there. Alyssa says, hell yeah. Let's see. I think the best way to explain tank setup videos, how to make a burrito, how to make spaghetti, how to make a cheeseburger. However, once you've learned it to make those, you don't really want to watch how to make it again. Yeah, it's kind of the thing. Like actually, yeah, that's pretty accurate. Now imagine you've made a video on how to make a burrito, and you really don't want to watch another video on how to make a burrito. Yeah, that's ultimately the point. Is that I don't even know how many tanks I've set up over the years. It was always an interesting pipe dream to go like, man, maybe you get like Robert Downey Jr. and he's your new client, and you go and you're setting up big fancy tanks for that guy or something like that. But the reality is I don't know any of those people, and I don't know how to know any of those people that really want exquisitely insane big giant projects to be built for them like that. If you want to get to know that guy, go bug Tom Barr. He's the guy who knows all of them. Which is really weird because he's the guy that set up all the tanks at the Amazon spheres, for instance. But yeah, we made some videos with him on collecting Manzanita driftwood, and boy howdy, did that get a lot of people upset. They got super mad. A lot of people got mad. I don't think that they understood the context that us collecting with Tom Barr was the guy that's permitted, that is also educated to specifically be there with us to tell us what Manzanita to collect. Like, he's the dude. Oh my God, Vicky is sending me links, guys. Okay, which actually, there's a reason why she's sending me links. It's because it's 3:45, and means that I got to wrap this up because I got other stuff to do in order to not starve to death and whatnot. So, I want to give a shout out to Will M, Secret History, Living Near Aquarium, and Kelly Foreman for super chatting today. Very much appreciate it. Hunter S became a member, which brought us up to 72 members. Did we have any patrons? I didn't even share the patron page today. But I almost guarantee you a bunch of people like probably canceled their patron today. So you guys should go over there and become patrons for sure. And if you become a member on YouTube, it's slightly confusing to get some of your perks. Understandably, I get it. Like Hunter, this goes out to you. You're the new member today. If you head over to my YouTube page, you'll notice little tabs at the top. There's a community tab. If you open that up and you scroll down, now that you're a member, you will see the member posts. When you see those member posts, you can click through onto the Discord. It'll take you over there. It'll guide you along on like how to sign up if you don't have Discord. If you do, it'll just bump you right in there, and then boom, you'll be there, and you'll be like, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" And we'll be like, "We're talking about whatever." There's a lot of topics that we talk about over there, from not only fish tanks, but news and politics, new videos, projects that I'm working on, art. The live stream always gets posted there, which is what people were asking earlier, like, what time do you live stream? I'm like, well, I notify my audience. So, yeah, a little bit goofy, but hopefully you guys have a fantastic time. Love to hear your comments on how much of a dum-dum I am, for sure. Why not? Worst thing that could happen is you get banned. I mean, it's the worst thing for you, not really for me, because then I don't ever have to hear your comments ever again, and that's kind of how that works. And it's not a freedom of speech thing because I'm not a representative of the government. Read the Constitution, please. Please read the Constitution, guys. Anyhow, talk to you later.